Sergio, how are you doing?
Hi, David. Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Let's talk about the different case studies we've chosen to use throughout this course.
Yes, be happy to do that. Let me start. So let's start with one of the most frightening one I know in my experience, that is the COMPAS use case. COMPAS is an algorithm that is still used in some federal states of the US, and now it's 2023. In 2016 was the center of a big scandal because it turned out that the system was extremely inaccurate and it was used for a very sensitive task, that is support judges in parole decision. So while supporting judges in parole decision, the system had to calculate the risk scoring of different defendants. And it turned out that the system was heavily biased against people of color. So there was some investigation on the system, and they found out that the probability that a person of color had to be scored as high risk was way higher than the probability of a white person, all things being equal. So this is a very important use case when we're talking about algorithm bias and how to avoid this kind of racist bias in the algorithms.
Absolutely. And this is one of the classic cases which is used, generally to sort of explain this. And my favorite sort of classic scandal was the Apple scandal. When they had their credit card, they were the biggest company in the world at the time. They had a sort of really, really expensive contract to sort of have people design the credit rating sort of component of their credit card. And when the credit card came out, there was huge public outcry because of gender differences related to husbands and wife getting very different credit scores and having different credit limits they were offered and so on. And the end of the story was, of course, that the data scientists were found not guilty of actually having bias in their algorithms, but the whole project was basically scrapped by then because it doesn't matter whether they're sort of legally guilty or not. In the public opinion, the product was totally destroyed. And this is a sort of the biggest company in the world getting it wrong for reasons which are preventable.
Exactly. And this happened also to another very big company, that is Amazon. And this is why we chose this other use case. So the Amazon personal selection algorithm. And in this case, it could be proven that there were sexist biases in the algorithm. Fortunately, this happened before the system was actually used for personal selection. But what happened, what developers remarked, is that the system learned to penalize women applying for jobs like engineer. So, and the system learned to penalize the word women in resumes. Or, for example, if you were in the women chess club at your high school, the system learned to penalize this in your resume. And this is, of course, also very frightening, like in COMPAS, and it makes us think how we could fix these biases and this problem with algorithmic discrimination.
And what I like about these last two examples is that actually we believe that working responsibly, these are fixable problems. And this is where the next case study that we've got, the sort of protein folding example, is one where we're trying to use that as the sort of the human flourishing example, the really positive example, where there are elements of how this has been done which sort of demonstrate that if you do AI really responsibly and collaboratively, that's one of the key points of the sort of protein folding process and how they've been working on it, then you can get some, you can do amazing things with responsible AI. And we really hope to sort of highlight that. We're not, this course is not trying to stop people do good AI. On the contrary, we want to sort of empower people to do good AI. And there's a sort of final case study which you should
exactly mention. And speaking of empowering, the final case, unfortunately, is also a bad case, but it can make us reflect about empowering people and the role of humans in this decisions that are taken by algorithms right now, because it's the Ofqual case, which is very infamous, especially in the UK, because it's the case of an algorithm, an AI system, selecting and grading students, so attributing grades to students, and this happens during COVID. So final exams were cancelled, and they were looking for a way to assess the grade of the students. And they thought, why don't let an algorithm do that? Well, the lesson we can learn from this is that AI system shouldn't always do the job, and this is the point. So sometimes human flourishing and empowerment relies in the fact that we keep meaningful human control over what is going on.
Absolutely, and I think the Ofqual example is really wonderful for this, because it was never used in the end. And I think it's a case where actually, as you dig into the ethics of it, you know, there are just simply areas where we don't believe AI should be doing that job, because it can only use the data it's got. And by definition, in the case of exam scores, well, that's what the student was in the past. That doesn't represent what they are now. And so we can't use historical data to sort of determine your fate, because that doesn't take into account your growth. You know, you've got to have humans in the loop for certain things. And the Ofqual example is a wonderful case where I think there was a need for it. COVID meant that exams were cancelled, but AI shouldn't be used for everything.
Not always, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.